I've been a truck driver since I was 25, and in those years, I've seen my fair share of odd occurrences on the road. I've worked for several different companies, making deliveries to places across the country. One day, I had to make a long haul across California, from one end to the other. It was a big load of wooden furniture, and the majority of the drive would take me through desolate roads. I had already started my day later than expected, so I knew most of the drive would be under the cover of darkness. As the night deepened, the straight, empty roads seemed to stretch endlessly before me. With little traffic, I was able to push my truck a bit faster than usual. But then, in the distance, I noticed the flashing lights of a car. I had to slam on the brakes to stop in time. As I pulled up behind the car, I saw it was an old Chevy Impala, parked on the side of the road. The hazards were flashing, but there was no one around. I figured I should do the right thing and check if anyone needed help. I got out of my truck and walked over to the car. I tapped on the window, but there was no response. Who would leave their car out here, especially on such an isolated stretch of road? As I stood there, still confused, I turned and noticed something. A small, dilapidated gas station in the distance. I hadn't noticed it before, but now the beam of my headlights illuminated the scene. It was a rundown old place, with 2 gas pumps and a small building that looked like it had once been a convenience store. My curiosity got the better of me, so I grabbed a flashlight from my truck and walked over to investigate. When I shone the flashlight on the building, the light revealed an eerie, empty convenience store. The door was permanently jammed open. And when I stepped inside, I noticed how cold and abandoned the place felt. The shelves that should have been stocked with snacks and drinks were empty, and the silence inside echoed off the walls. It was unnerving, and I could feel my skin crawl. I called out, hoping someone was around. There was a faint echo in the room, which made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Then I heard something. A scrape, like a shoe dragging across the floor from the other side of the room, behind some shelves. I called out again, asking if anyone needed help. That's when I heard it. Deep, heavy breathing coming from one of the corners. It wasn't just an unsettling noise. It felt wrong, like I wasn't supposed to be there. Suddenly I heard footsteps, so soft yet so heavy that they made my blood run cold. As I walked toward the back of the store where I had heard the breathing, I froze. There, on the floor, was a fresh pool of blood. Panic shot through me. I quickly turned and ran back to my truck, heart racing. I jumped into the driver's seat and called 911. As I spoke to the operator, the Chevy Impala's engine suddenly roared to life, and it sped down the road, vanishing into the darkness. I hadn't seen anyone get into the car. I hadn't seen a soul. It was as if the car just came to life on its own. The police arrived soon after, but I could barely give them any useful information. All I could tell them was that it was a black Chevy Impala, early 2000s, and that I heard a woman scream as the car drove away. There was no body, but the blood on the floor told a different story. I tried to help, but there wasn't much more I could do. The police took blood samples and searched the area, but as for me, I never went back there again. And the very next week, I installed a dash cam in my truck, just in case something like that ever happened again. That night still haunts me, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. Some things, once you experience them, you can never unsee. I've been a truck driver for quite some time, and while I've encountered my share of strange moments on the road, one incident stands out above the rest. This happened when I was working for a UPS service, delivering packages around a small town in North Carolina. It was 2010, and I had been on the job for 2 years by then. The weather was cold, winter had fully set in, and the sun had already dipped below the horizon by the time I started my shift at 11 in the morning. The town where I worked was a peculiar one. It wasn't exactly dangerous, but it certainly wasn't the safest either. There were blocks of neat houses, but then there were also stretches of trailer homes, spaced too far apart from each other. with a dark forest looming just behind them. Some areas felt empty, abandoned even, and the deliveries were never quick. I had a long day ahead of me, going between 3 small towns making deliveries. By the time I was on the last leg of my shift, I was more than ready to finish up and head home. It was just after 6 in the evening, the sky already dark. I pulled up to a block that looked like the others, long rows of empty spaces with a few scattered homes. There was only one house left to deliver to, and it had to be signed for. The house was a trailer, and when I pulled up, I could tell there was no one home. There were no lights on, and no car parked out front, but the package still needed a signature, so I knocked a few times. The curtains in one of the windows shifted, and then I heard footsteps approaching. The door finally creaked open to reveal an older woman. She looked at me nervously, her face pale. She seemed fidgety, like she wasn't entirely sure what to make of me. I handed her the device to sign for the package, but her signature was shaky, almost sloppy. I asked if she needed help with the heavy box, and she nodded quickly, almost eagerly. Without much thought, I grabbed the large, clunky box and followed her into the house. The moment I crossed the threshold, the smell hit me. It wasn't just bad, it was unbearable. It was the kind of smell that sticks to you, like something decayed. The woman led me down a narrow hallway past the tiny living room. I struggled to maneuver the large box through the cramped space, but I followed her instructions. She stopped at a door at the end of the hall and told me to put the box in the back of the room, into a closet. It was dark, the only light coming from a lamp in the living room that barely reached down the hall. I asked her to turn on the light, but she said it didn't work. It was nearly pitch black in there, but I could see enough to make out the outline of the closet door. As I got closer, something made my blood run cold. There, standing in the corner of the closet, was a figure. A person. I could see the shape clearly, but there was something wrong about it. It was as if they were hiding, waiting. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly placed the box in the closet and walked out past the woman, who was still watching me with unnerving intensity. As I walked to the door, she called after me, yelling for me to come back and help her. Her voice, harsh and demanding, made me stop in my tracks for just a second. But something in my gut told me to leave, to get out of there as quickly as possible. I didn't say another word. I just left. I heard her scream at me as I walked away, but I didn't look back. I had no idea what was going on inside that house, but I had a very bad feeling about it. I got into my truck and finished my shift, but I couldn't shake the image of that figure in the closet from my mind. That night, when I got home, I started looking for another job. I couldn't bring myself to work in that town again, and I certainly didn't want to deliver to that trailer. I'm not sure what happened in that house, but I know I'll never forget that strange feeling I had when I walked into the dark hallway, or the eerie sense of something, or someone, watching me. It was a Thursday night, and I was driving through the night from New York to North Carolina for a couple of job interviews. I was living in New York at the time and decided to drive instead of flying to save money. My current job was awful, and these interviews represented a real shot at a fresh start with great salaries and benefits. Plus, the weather would be a huge improvement over the cold, gray winters of New York. I started my drive after work, leaving at about 8 p.m. I had about 8 hours ahead of me, and my estimated time of arrival was around 2 a.m. I stopped by home to grab my suitcase and say goodbye to my family. Then I hit the road. The first few hours of the drive weren't too bad. I drank a lot of coffee and kept myself awake, but the exhaustion of having had a rough day at work and barely any sleep the night before was catching up with me. I was getting tired, but the interviews kept me focused, at least for a while. By the time I was 2 hours from my destination, it was well past midnight. The roads were almost completely deserted, and I started to feel the fatigue weigh heavily on me. My eyes kept wanting to close. Suddenly, I spotted a man standing by the side of the road. He was dressed in a suit, not moving, just staring at my car as I drove past. I could swear he was watching me. It was so strange, it made my skin crawl. I even thought about turning around to ask if he needed help, but something in me made me just drive on. Maybe 5 minutes later, I saw another man, also in a suit, standing by the side of the road. It was too much. What was going on? Were they part of some strange late-night event? Without thinking, I pulled over, considering offering help. But just as I slowed down, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The man had vanished. It was like he evaporated. I sped up, heart racing, and got back on the road. I needed a pit stop. I couldn't go on much longer. I pulled into the nearest gas station, grabbing a coffee. As I sat in the car in the parking lot trying to gather myself, I saw the same man, the one in the suit, standing under a light post near the entrance. This time I could see him clearly. Short, dark hair, clean-shaven, and staring right at me. My heart skipped a beat. It was too much. I had to leave. I finished my coffee in a hurry and got back on the road, but I was so exhausted I didn't think I could make it much longer. I pulled into a random parking lot, hoping to get a few minutes of sleep. But the fear crept in. I was scared to close my eyes, afraid I would open them and see him standing outside again. Finally, exhaustion took over. I started to drift off, but something jolted me awake. I looked around the car, but there was nothing. Then I glanced into the rearview mirror, and my blood ran cold. For a second, I saw a person sitting in the back seat. My mind screamed, but I didn't want to look again. I threw open the door, yelling, and stumbled backward. I was panicked, shaking, until I looked inside again. The back seat was empty. There was no one. I had to get myself together. I turned the car back on and pushed through the last stretch of the drive. By the time I arrived at the hotel, it was close to 3 a.m. I collapsed into the bed and fell asleep immediately. The next day, when I met my first interviewer, I froze. The man walking toward me looked exactly like the man in the suit I had kept seeing the night before. The image was so clear in my mind that I couldn't stop staring. I could see the man notice my weird reaction, and I knew I had blown the interview. The second one went better, and I landed the job, but the memory of that eerie night still haunts me. My therapist later suggested that the stress and lack of sleep had caused me to hallucinate. It makes sense, but it doesn't make it any less terrifying. I'll never forget that night. The man in the suit is something I'll never escape from. It was the early hours of the morning, around 4 a.m. on a Saturday. I was speeding down the interstate, trying to make up for being late to work. I was already pushing the limits of my speed, going about 75 or 80 miles per hour. Then, out of nowhere, I noticed a car in my rearview mirror coming up fast, way faster than me. It was clear the driver was speeding, maybe even going around 90 to 100 miles per hour. As the car pulled closer, I could see it was a gray Honda Accord coupe. Curiosity got the best of me, and I glanced over at the driver. To my surprise, he was looking right back at me as he sped past. But then I saw something that sent a chill down my spine. In the back seat, there was a young woman, her face pressed against the window, and she was banging on it. At first, I thought she was just messing around, but then I saw the driver do something strange. He pushed her down under the window while swerving the car at the same time. That's when I realized this wasn't a joke. She was trying to get help. Panic hit me. I immediately started to speed up, trying to catch up to the car and keep an eye on what was happening. I saw the driver reaching back, swinging his arm at the woman. Her arms flailed as she struggled in the back seat. My heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't just some argument. This was a kidnapping. I grabbed my phone and called 911, all while trying to keep pace with them. The car in front of me started to slow down, its brake lights flashing. It was clear that the driver had noticed I was following them. As much as I wanted to help the woman, I wasn't sure if the man in the car had a weapon. I knew I couldn't get too close. I decided to pull off at the next exit but didn't fully leave the highway. I waited for the car to pass me, then quickly turned around and merged back onto the road, all while still on the phone with the dispatcher. I was pushing my car to 90 miles per hour again, trying to catch up. But when I did, the driver noticed me again. He slammed on his brakes and I had to swerve around him. As I did, he jumped out of his car and started running toward me, holding something in his hand. In a panic, I threw my car in reverse and backed away as fast as I could. I needed to get out of there. Once I was far enough, I slammed it into drive and floored it. The 911 operator told me that a state trooper was just ahead. I couldn't believe it when I saw the flashing blue and red lights behind me. The police had caught up to the man chasing me. My shoulders relaxed as I pulled over, still a bit distant from the scene, unsure of what was going to happen next. The cop got out with his gun drawn, and the man was quickly arrested. I watched the entire thing unfold. The woman was freed from the car, badly beaten but alive. She was crying tears of relief as she thanked me repeatedly for what I had done. Turns out the man was her ex-boyfriend. After she refused to talk to him, he'd shown up at her house, grabbed her and thrown her into his car. The child locks on the back doors kept her trapped inside. It made me shudder to think about what might have happened if I hadn't seen her struggle, if I hadn't been there. It was in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and I was driving home from a long shift at the hospital. I had just finished a 12-hour shift and my body felt like it was on autopilot, just going through the motions. I was tired, exhausted even, but I didn't mind. The road was quiet, almost eerie. The town I lived in is small, and the parkway I drove on is rarely busy at night. The streets were practically empty, and it was the perfect time for me to get home quickly. As I drove along the parkway, I noticed something strange off in the distance. A car parked by the side of the road. It wasn't an emergency vehicle, and the headlights weren't flashing. The car was just sitting there, its engine off. I slowed down, thinking it was a broken-down car. My first instinct was to keep going, but something about it made me hesitate. I saw a man standing near the car, waving his arms in the air. It wasn't like he was in distress. It looked more like he was trying to get my attention. His frantic gestures immediately put me on edge. I decided to pull over, thinking maybe I could offer some help. I had jumper cables in the trunk, and it wasn't out of the question that someone might need a jump. As I rolled down my window, the man approached. He was Hispanic, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, though his face was mostly covered by a COVID mask. He told me that his car had broken down and his phone had died. He asked if I could lend him my phone so he could call for a tow or a friend. I hesitated for a moment, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. Something about the situation didn't sit right with me. He paused for a second, then nodded. "That's okay." He gestured toward his car. "Do you have jumper cables? My battery's dead." I considered it. I did have jumper cables in the trunk, and under normal circumstances, I wouldn't think twice about helping. But something in my gut told me to be careful. Still, I didn't want to seem paranoid, so I stepped out of the car. The cold night air hit me immediately, and the road was eerily quiet, pitch black except for the faint glow of my headlights. As I walked toward his car, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The car's interior was completely dark, but the doors weren't fully shut. I caught a glimpse of movement inside. Someone was in the back seat. They are not sitting, but crouched low, pressed into the shadows, as if trying to stay out of sight. A chill ran down my spine. No one just sits like that in the back seat of a broken-down car. My instincts screamed at me. This wasn't right. Without a second thought, I spun around and bolted toward my car. My heart pounded as I yanked the door open and threw myself inside. My hands fumbled for the gear shift as I slammed my foot onto the gas. The tires screeched against the pavement, my car lurching forward. Behind me, I could hear the man yell, but I didn't look back. my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't know if they were chasing me, and I didn't care. I just needed to get away. After a few miles, I spotted a gas station up ahead and pulled in. My heart was still racing, but I forced myself to grab my phone and call 911. The dispatcher answered, and I told them what happened. They told me to stay put and wait for an officer. A patrol car arrived a few minutes later. 2 officers got out and asked me to explain everything again. They took down details about the car and the men, then said they would check it out. They also asked if I wanted to file a full report at the station, but I just wanted to go home. I drove home, feeling drained. When I got inside, I locked the doors, checked the windows, and went straight to bed. I was exhausted, but I knew one thing for sure. Something bad could have happened if I hadn't trusted my gut. A week later, my parents and I were sitting at home when my dad heard something outside. He swore he heard footsteps in the backyard. We went to check, but when we got outside, no one was there. My heart was racing, but my dad decided not to call the police just yet. We waited, but nothing else happened. That night still haunts me. I can't shake the feeling that those men were waiting for someone else to stop, to trap them too. And I'll never be able to forget how close I came to becoming their next victim. I've learned my lesson. No matter how much someone seems to need help, I will never stop for anyone on a deserted highway at night again. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.